Hey guys, welcome to my channel. My name is ReadingBear and I hope you are ready for some more stories. And today, we'll take a look at some new entitled people content. If you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comment. And now, let's dive right into the stories.
The first story is entitled Crazy HOA President. Just before leaving active duty military after almost 10 years, my wife and I bought a large house in my hometown on the coast in a nice neighborhood with an HOA. I had never lived in an HOA before and never knew how bad, cliquey, or political it could be. Not long after we moved in, the letters started about having a boat in our driveway. Mind you, we lived not 100 yards from the water. Really? So, we complied and placed it in a local marina. After living there about 2 years, the neighbors we had, which were really great, moved and a new, older couple moved in. They were really nice at first, letting my children swim in their pool, sharing an adult beverage in the evening, talking on the fence, etc. Then it happened. The wife ran for and became the HOA president. She started walking around the neighborhood and taking notes. She would walk into people's yards and make corrections, and even go so far as trespass into people's backyards, gated or not, and take pictures of violations and send out letters. I came home one evening to find her on my back porch looking at things and taking pictures. I was a police officer at the time, and while trying to be nice, informed her she could get into a lot of trouble for what she was doing. She tried to tell me as the HOA president she was entitled to go into people's private property and even their houses to inspect them if need be. I informed her of the state and federal laws against this, and it started a war. I immediately started receiving $100 fines for very minor issues with my home. I fixed the issues immediately and never had to pay the fines with the HOA property management company, but did file complaints. The HOA PM company never did do anything about the complaints. And then it happened. I also owned a small business which I had a truck and trailer I would use during the business day. I had this parked in front of the house one day and she took a picture of it. According to the HOA rules, it was not allowed to be there overnight, and never was. I received a letter and a fine for $100 stating that the vehicle had been parked there overnight. This time I asked for a review with the HOA board of directors, the PM company, the attorney, and my attorney. This was going to cost the HOA, PM company, and all involved much more than $100 in time and money. At this meeting I asked the HOA president to present evidence other than one picture that the vehicle was there more than 24 hours with time and date stamps. She could not. I then asked for the $100 to be dropped. The HOA board and PM company refused. I was publicly berated by the HOA president in front of the board and my attorney, saying I should be a good soldier, and do as I was told by the HOA board and obey the rules. At this point my attorney and I had enough evidence of harassment due to recording the conversation. We then informed everyone in the room we had been recording everyone. This inflamed them more and they threatened to call the police for violating the law. In our state it was more than legal and well within our rights. We then informed them we would be filing a lawsuit which was sure to win and would bankrupt the HOA. According to state law and the HOA bylaws, in the event the HOA ceased to exist or became bankrupt, each and every one of the 35 houses in the HOA would have their mortgages immediately due and payable. Most people don't know this exists in a lot of HOA covenants. We just got up and walked out of the meeting and said we think this settles the matter and hope there will be no further fines, threats, harassment, etc. I had very good friends in the neighborhood and did not want to see their families affected. About a month later the HOA had elections for a new HOA board. I informed several people in the neighborhood I would be running for the HOA board president. We got together and on the night of the board meeting and election we attended, and there were only about 10 people there to vote. There were 6 people along with myself who voted for me, but miraculously the incumbent HOA president had a unanimous vote when the property management company chair counted the votes. Right there in the meeting I asked all 6 people who voted for me to raise their hand. With me that was 7, and the PM chair had no answer since it had already been entered into the corporate minutes. I said it would be fine, let it stand, and then informed everyone in the room about the previous meeting, mortgages, suing the HOA, and now calling the state attorney general's office. Within a short time the property management company was changed out. The HOA president was replaced with a nice, level-headed gentleman, and I never, ever so much as heard a peep from the HOA ever again. I played by the rules more or less, but eventually sold the house and moved on. Never mess with a paratrooper. The next story is titled, Being Singled Out for Renting. So, I moved into a condo a little over a year ago with my fiancé. We have had no issues for the last year and renewed our lease with our landlord, who we have a great relationship with. A few months ago, the HOA president told us that the HOA was voting to ban all renting from within the neighborhood. Their reasoning was that a lot of the rental units had been getting applicants that were on Section 8 or HUD. Due to it being illegal to discriminate against such housing applicants, they banned all renting. Units that were currently being rented are grandfathered in, but the HOA must vote to approve new renters. Once those units, 3 out of 20, are sold, they are then required to be lived in by the owner. Since this vote, we have randomly been getting complaints on various different violations on our behalf. No official fines that we know of unless they are sending them to our landlord. One was that we have 3 vehicles and are only allowed 2, at least 5 other units have more than 2 vehicles and we always park one in the garage, whereas most people park all of theirs in common parking. No big deal, I took our spare vehicle to my parents for storage. Next, we were told that we will have to clean up oil that has been leaked in the parking spaces which I frequently park. However, my vehicle doesn't have any leaks. The oil spots were there when we moved in. This parking is for anyone to use, and finally, I frequently park on our driveway which has no oil spots at all, proving my vehicle doesn't leak. Next, we received a complaint saying our back porch was cluttered and unsightly. We have a grill and 2 small planter boxes with flowers, which the HOA president always bragged about and was so glad that we cared about the area and making it look nice for the neighborhood when a lot of owners don't even care about their units. I want to say, I have no problem with following rules and understand the point of HOAs, I just feel I'm being singled out for renting. Another interesting thing to point out is one of the owners still has Christmas lights up from last Christmas and another put a bag of trash on the roof of his vehicle parked in his driveway for about a week before it was taken to the dumpster. It's obvious they aren't enforcing too many of their rules for owners. I have since requested a copy of the bylaws because our landlord never supplied us with one. It's been a couple weeks and I have yet to receive a copy. I resorted to requesting a copy from my landlord who said they will get an updated one for me this coming week. I can't wait for my work contract to expire so I can move from this place. The next story is titled, Now You Don't See Them, Now You Do. I was an inspection specialist serving in the United States Air Force. This was way back in the early 80s. I had been assigned a sweet 30-day temporary duty to England. I had a large box of equipment that I brought over in order to support the daily maintenance of our aircraft. The way it worked is that I would work out of the local test lab at the base we were stationed at. I come into the lab and I'm met by some real cool airmen that help me get my box moved in and briefly give me the rundown on who's cool and who isn't. The shop chief is not on the cool list, and it becomes very apparent when he finally shows up to see who the visiting airman is. One of those people that think they're above you for whatever reason. Bottom line is that he was despised by his crew. I needed to borrow a pair of pliers in order to loosen up some bolts holding the equipment box lid on, so I got a pair from their toolbox and got to work unpacking. It was a Friday, and I was eager to get done with it so I could sample the English culture firsthand. In my haste to get out the door, I failed to return the pliers to the toolkit, which is a huge no-no when you're in the Air Force and have access to a working flight line. All tools have to be accounted for at the end of each shift. This is to prevent a lost tool from either being left inside an airplane or left on the ground just waiting to be sucked into the intake of a jet engine. I get it and I'm good with the rule. Anyway, I had to come into the lab on Saturday, and I was told that the pliers were left out and are missing. Normal protocol demands that I report the missing tool to the dispatch office, and they'd shut down the flight line until either the tool was found elsewhere, or it was verified that it wasn't on the flight line. I decided to forego that part because I knew that the pliers never left the room we were in, and we were located well over a quarter mile from the flight line. We, as in the guys assigned weekend duty, spent hours scouring that entire lab for those pliers. We moved everything out of a couple of the rooms, checked in every box and container, and even looked in all the desks. Except one. It was the shop chief's desk, and it was locked up. I made the comment that we should X-ray his desk just to make sure. We had the capability to perform mobile X-ray inspection. Came back that Sunday and looked through everything again and still didn't find them. Monday comes and the shop chief asks if we had any luck finding the pliers. We told him no, and explained everything we did. He told us to try one more time, so off we go to repeat the process for the third time. However, as I was moving stuff in the room where I originally thought I lost the pliers, I spot them on the floor behind the wheel of a cart that I had moved out of that room 2 times before. I quietly let the crew know that I found them and told them that the shop chief must have been holding them. So, I picked them up and put them in my pocket, and told the crew to not say a word. Here's where the compliance comes in. We went ahead and cleared everything out of the room, as in totally empty. I called the shop chief over and told him that the room was cleared, and we didn't find the pliers. He walks over to the door of the room. I'm tracking where his eyes go, looks in at the exact spot where he put the pliers, and literally jumps a bit like he was startled. Then I really start laying it on thick. I tell him that the only place we haven't looked was in his locked desk, and how I was tempted to x-ray it, but now we have to call dispatch since the pliers have been missing for over 2 days, that the flight line must be shut down, acting like I'm about to panic because we could damage an airplane and compromise the mission. I just let it rip, and the whole time I watched his face get redder and redder until finally he fesses up and admits to hiding the pliers. I laid into him a lecture about playing games, and how he started this game, and now he wants to whine when I played the same game with him. Now keep in mind that this jerk outranked me, but he realized I had him by the balls because if he went after me for some kind of insubordination, then he'd have to explain a tool gone missing for over 2 days without reporting it. So, in the end I was a hero to the crew, and the shop chief left me alone for the remaining 27 days I was there. The next story is titled, Neighbor Bought and Parked 10 Cars on the Street to Try and Stop Roadwork. So last year the town board put to a vote a proposal to upgrade the town's water mains, sewage and bury the power lines. The town's residents voted to approve this venture and the vote came back with only 3 of the voters voting no. The town put out notices about 3 months ago that they will have to shut down my street as the ground will have to be completely ripped up to do this work. The town is very old, and the asphalt was laid over an old dirt road and was never done properly. You don't know potholes till you've been stuck in one. They will be doing things the right way as far as I can tell. My street will be one of the first streets to be worked on as the plan is to work on multiple areas at once. Their goal is to finish the entire neighborhood in 3 to 5 years. You know government work. So, with all that in mind my neighbor, who is a right piece of work and the wealthiest guy in a very rich neighborhood has opposed this plan from the beginning. He has allegedly filed suit against the town for the inconvenience this will cause him. He also has publicly threatened to sue for the noise this will be created. He is actually the reason this didn't go through 5 years ago when it was first proposed as he kept interrupting every board meeting. Well, this morning on my way into work I saw about 6 cars parked in front of his house. I called my wife at lunchtime, to talk about life and parenting stuff. She asked me if I saw the cars that our neighbor parked on the street. I asked if he was having a St. Patrick's Day party. She said no. My wife, who needs a hobby other than gossiping, said she found out he plans on leaving them on the street with flat tires and chained together so the road crews can't work. I responded with, I guess I should call the board and volunteer my tow truck and bolt cutters. What does this guy hope to gain here? Edit. I will post a follow-up next week sometime. We shall see what happens on Monday when the construction crews start working. I drove past the 10 cars all with no license plates and all tires from what I can see are flat. The construction company is a customer of mine so this should be good. The owner is the other word for donkey. The last story is titled, Who Told You to Do It This Way? Being a travel nurse in the operating room has its benefits. The pay, the ability to take time off between assignments, and the bits of malicious compliance that makes you feel warm and fuzzy inside. Been at this hospital for 2 months. I've worked with this particular surgeon a handful of times, but it's always been the same procedure, so I know what he wants for every step of the case. I'm about to start applying skin prep, another layer of antimicrobial security to prevent post-op infection, to where the surgeon is going to operate. He always wants the armpit, front shoulder, and breast, chest of the specific side prepped. We're operating on the patient's right side. They're already asleep, and their right arm is padded and secured on an arm board. Before I start prepping, the scrub tech immediately says, you need to undo their arm, from the board, so that you can prep the whole arm. I tell them no, the surgeon wants it prepped this way, the arm stays on the board. This scrub tech hadn't done this case with this doctor in quite some time either, but they still decided to explain how the whole arm should be prepped for this procedure. I ignored them. I begin my prep. Less than a minute later, the charge nurse comes in to log into a portable X-ray device. Us travelers don't often get credentials for those. And the scrub tech decides to ask the charge nurse how the surgical site should be prepped for this case, right in front of me. The charge nurse backs up the scrub tech and tells me I should be prepping the whole arm in addition to the sites that I mentioned earlier. I protested, but Dr. X doesn't want that. He always wants the same areas prepped and draped accordingly. The charge nurse wasn't budging, and they demand I unfasten the arm and do it their way instead. I sigh and say okay. Cue malicious compliance. I prep the whole arm and am holding it in my sterile glove while waiting for the drapes and stockinette to be applied. All of a sudden, the most glorious thing happens. The surgeon arrives with the charge nurse still in the room. "Did you prep the whole arm?" he asked me. "Yep. Why did you do that? You've been here 2 months. How do you not remember the prep by now?" "I was told to prep it this way." "By whom? Who told you to do it this way?" The surgeon was pissed due to this delay. As a traveler, I've learned to take the heat for making small mistakes, and I was contemplating taking the fall for this so that we could just move on with the rest of the day. But before I could speak, my charge nurse was actually humble and admitted that they told me to prep the whole arm. The doc looked at me. "Did you tell them how I prefer it to be done?" "I did." The doc turned back to the charge nurse and proceeded to lambaste her for delaying the case. The scrub tech just stared blankly at the wall. But I didn't look or listen. I just stood there enjoying the moment with the biggest shit-eating grin under my mask. It's a nice day when someone else proves you were right. Needless to say, I didn't renew my contract at that hospital. Thank you for listening.